The story revolves around a young woman whose ballet career abruptly ends early, leaving her vulnerable to the manipulative grasp of her uncle. She's then forced into joining a covert Russian intelligence service that trains and uses its recruits as naked weapons for the country. Her initiation follows a shocking encounter, where she witnesses the murder of an oligarch. With her back against the wall, she joins the service, but soon turns the tables, daring to gamble on her own terms. Hey guys, welcome back to IM Movies. Today we'll be looking at the 2018 American thriller movie titled Red Sparrow. But before we jump into the details, make sure to show us some love by liking the video and subscribing to the channel. Now let's get right into it. The movie begins with Dominika, immersed in meditation to classical music. She is a fierce prima ballerina at Moscow's Bolshoi Theater, has honed her ballet skills since childhood. It's not just her passion, but also her sole means of supporting herself and her ailing mother, whom she adores and prioritizes above all else. Later that evening, Lenny, Dominika's mother's caregiver provided by the Bolshoi, arrives to assist her mother, allowing Dominika to leave for her upcoming show. Meanwhile, Nate, a CIA operative working undercover in Moscow, receives coded instructions by a phone call, instructing him to meet someone at a park. At the Bolshoi, Dominika, now dressed for her performance, is introduced by her uncle Ivan, deputy director of Russia's Foreign Intelligence Service, to Ustinov, an art-loving oligarch. Ustinov warmly extends his support to Dominika and suggests she reach out to him for any assistance she may need. After a photo op, the show begins. Dominika takes the stage, captivating the audience with her grace and precision. Every movement is executed with fluidity. As her partner Konstantin joins her, they present a mesmerizing performance. However, tragedy strikes as Konstantin accidentally fractures Dominika's leg, and she is quickly taken to the hospital. Meanwhile, Nate conducts a swift exchange with his asset in the park. However, undercover narcotics officers mistake it for a drug deal. To divert their attention, Nate fires his gun, prompting them to chase after him. His asset, codenamed Marble, is a Russian official working with the CIA, communicating exclusively with Nate through code words. Nate's action is to ensure Marble's true identity remains unknown. Returning to his colleagues Marty and Simon, Nate learns that his asset escaped unidentified. However, the incident has attracted the Russian government's interest. The next day, Ivan meets with Colonel Zakharov, head of the Russian intelligence service, and General Korchnoi, leader of Russia's Foreign Intelligence Service. They discuss the previous night's incident, puzzled over Marble's identity. They suspect he might be a mole within one of Russia's intelligence agencies, given that Nate is American. Meanwhile, Dominika's career-ending injury leaves her devastated. Months later, Ivan visits her and her mother, offering support. He suggests finding a new path for Dominika to sustain herself and cover her mother's medical expenses. Ivan assures her of his ongoing assistance and invites her to reach out whenever she feels ready. Before leaving, Ivan provides Dominika with evidence, a phone record, revealing that her injury was no accident. It was orchestrated by Konstantin and his jealous girlfriend Sonia, who aimed to replace Dominika as the lead ballet performer. This revelation angers Dominika. Driving her back to the theater for revenge, she follows them to the locker room bathroom, where she finds them engaged in intimacy. Unaware of her presence, she viciously strikes them with her walking stick, ensuring Konstantin suffers a fractured waist before calling for an ambulance. Returning home, Dominika finds her mother in tears on the floor. She learns that the Bolshoi terminated Lenny's services. The grim reality that Bolshoi will withdraw all privileges, including their residence and her mother's costly medical care, sets in. Left with no choice, Dominika meets Ivan to explore options. Ivan discloses the Russian government's interest in Ustinov and proposes she get close to him and earn his trust to get information from him. Dominika declines Ivan's offer, knowing Ustinov's reputation. However, Ivan assures her that if she proves useful to the government, she'll be able to maintain their apartment and her mother's expensive medical care. Reluctantly, Dominika agrees to do the job. On the designated day, Dominika follows instructions, arriving at Ustinov's usual hotel restaurant. Ustinov approaches her, initiating a conversation. Despite claiming to await a friend, Ustinov detects she's lying and asks what brings her to the restaurant. Dominika tells Ustinov about her desire to return to ballet, seeking his help. She leads him to her room, requesting his bodyguards to leave. Surprisingly, Ustinov agrees, and they step outside. As Ustinov examines her scar, he suddenly kisses her. Dominika tries to resist, but he forces himself on her. In the struggle, a masked man enters through the balcony, slits Ustinov's throat, and escapes with Dominika. The masked man turns out to be Semyonov, one of the operatives of the Secret Service. After they return, General Korchnoi wonders how Ivan managed Ustinov's killing. Ivan reveals that he exploited a moment when Ustinov's guards were away, allowing Semyonov to carry out the killing. General Korchnoi instructs him to eliminate Dominika, but Ivan believes she'll be useful. and decides to keep her despite their strict protocol of eliminating witnesses. Korchnoi reminds him of the risk. However, Ivan defends her, citing her discretion and revealing their familial relationship. Later, Ivan meets with Dominika, who is shaken by the events. She expresses her disappointment in Ivan's failure to protect her as promised, but Ivan appears indifferent to her distress. Ivan informs her that the Russian government doesn't spare witnesses. However, he presents her with a choice: undergo training to work for the Russian intelligence service and live, or be executed. Dominika has no choice but to accept the condition. Dominika enters the Sparrow school, where recruits are taught to use seduction as a weapon. Despite the matron's strict approach, Dominika rebels against the school's explicit and reprobate teachings. When attacked by a classmate, she defends herself, earning respect from General Korchnoi for her bravery. Despite the matron's intimidation and negative report about her, Dominika remains unfazed. However, General Korchnoi is impressed by Dominika's fierceness and sees her as having great potential and ready for service. Returning home, Dominika receives a call from Ivan requesting to meet. Meanwhile, Nate had returned to Washington, D.C. after the incident with the Russian police. The agency instructs him to refrain from foreign assignments due to potential scrutiny from the Russian government. Nate argues that Marble trusts only him and will only communicate with him, but the agency ignores his concern. After Marble refuses to communicate with anyone else for months, the agency decides to send Nate to Budapest to continue his mission and initiate contact with Marble. The Russian intelligence service learns of Nate's reassignment and suspects he may be attempting to reconnect with the mole. Dominika meets Ivan at a restaurant, where he assigns her a mission in Budapest to gain Nate's trust and uncover the mole's identity. She hands her a new name and ID. He instructs her to do whatever it takes to accomplish the mission. Despite her anger towards Ivan for sending her to a degenerate school, she embarks on her mission. Upon arriving in Budapest, Dominika settles into an apartment shared with Marta, another Sparrow who's on a different mission. The station chief, Volantov, briefs her on Nate and emphasizes the importance of regular progress reports. Eager to make contact with Nate, Dominika registers at the same pool where Nate swims. While registering, she initially begins writing her code name, but then decides to write her real name instead. As Dominika exits the swimming pool that day, Nate initiates contact with her. When asked what she does, she tells him she works as a translator at the embassy. Nate mentions not having seen her at any events, and comments on her hair color, claiming to have seen her the day before, which she denies. The next day, while checking out of the swimming pool, Dominika discovers that her ID is missing. It turns out Nate is responsible for the missing ID. He shares with his superiors, Marty and Simon, that he suspects Dominika is a Sparrow, not a translator at the embassy as she had claimed. Marty and Simon ponder why a Sparrow will use her real name. They warn Nate to stay away from her, but he sees potential value in her and is told to gather information cautiously. Dominika visits the state chief's office requesting to be enlisted for an event at the embassy. While scanning the hall to spot Nate, she sees Marta speaking with Stephanie Boucher, the chief of staff to a U.S. senator. When Nate shows up and strikes up a conversation with her, Dominika finds herself compelled to be open with him, as he has already figured out her real identity. They agreed to have dinner the following night. Upon reaching home, Dominika searches Marta's apartment out of curiosity and discovers she's trying to buy classified information about the American government from Boucher under the code name Swan for the sum of $250,000. Marta returns while Dominika is still in her room. Despite the close call, she manages to satisfy her curiosity and narrowly escapes being caught. Upon her return, Marta hands her a report that Volantov has sent to Moscow, revealing it to be negative. Volantov has an interest in Dominika but believes she's playing hard to get, making her his enemy. That night, Dominika follows Volantov to a bar where she asks him to send a positive report to buy her more time. She teases his small manhood, which provokes Volantov, and he hits her in the face. However, Dominika had recorded the incident, threatening to use the video against him if he didn't cooperate. The following night, Dominika visits the restaurant where she had agreed to meet with Nate, but instead of going in, she hides outside. When Nate leaves the restaurant disappointed, Dominika secretly follows him home. As Nate reaches his apartment, his phone rings. It's Marble finally contacting him after months of no contact. Giving him a secret code, Marble instructs him to come to Vienna. Just then, Dominika calls him, faking sobs, and he invites her up. Nate offers her a drink, and Dominika shares that Volantov physically assaulted her because she refused to sleep with him. She proceeds to ask him why he fired his gun at a public park, and he responds that he did so to protect a friend, asserting that Dominika knows what he's talking about. She kisses him on the lips and he asks what she wants, suggesting she go home and figure it out. The next day, Dominika returns to Nate's apartment but finds him absent. She decides to search for any vital information but finds nothing. She then takes a glass cup that Nate had used the previous night and leaves. Returning to her apartment, she is surprised to find Ivan there. She offers him a drink while updating him on the progress of her mission. She reveals that Nate is beginning to let his guard down. However, he informs her that their superiors are getting impatient. Dominika tells Ivan that she and Marta are working on a case with great potential. She claims that she and Marta are developing an asset in Boucher to get her to work as a mole for Russia's foreign intelligence service. She reveals that Boucher had agreed to share classified information and is requesting $250,000 for the trade. After Ivan leaves, Marta, who has overheard their discussion, steps out of her room, pointing a gun at Dominika. Having realized she searched her apartment, Dominika explains that she did that to buy herself some time. Marta is enraged as she's been developing that asset for a while now, and suddenly she wants to claim it. Dominika assures her that she'll make sure the credit goes to her, and that she also gets the money. Marta asks her what they have over her, and she reveals that she witnessed the murder of Ustinov, and that they would kill her for even exposing the secret to her. However, Marta goes to Volantov to sell Dominika out by mentioning Ustinov's murder, but they end up killing her instead. Upon returning home that day, Dominika finds Marta brutally tortured and murdered by Semyonov. He warns Dominika that this is what happens when someone exposes Russian secrets. Meanwhile, Nate returns from Vienna, revealing to his superiors that Marble has contacted him and also confirming that Dominika is a Sparrow, as he had suspected. His colleagues suggest he avoid her, but he believes he can recruit her to work for them. Following Marta's murder, Dominika is taken in by the police for questioning. Upon leaving the station, she meets Nate outside and follows him home. Nate, aware of her history, wonders why her uncle would subject her to such a life. She shares the story of how she got caught up in the mess in the first place, revealing that they'll kill her the same way they killed Marta if she doesn't find the mole Nate is working with. Nate tells her that the people she works for will never let her go, no matter what she does or gives to them. They own her and have owned her all her life. He then asks her to work with him and play the game her way for the first time in her life, promising to protect her at all costs. Nate offers his bed for the night while he takes the couch. Later that night, Dominika comes next to Nate, asks him if she can trust him, and Nate answers yes, and the two makes love. The next morning, Dominika wakes up to the classical sounds of Grieg's piano concerto, bringing back memories of her early days in ballet, which she shares with Nate. Dominika agrees to work with Nate as a double agent. He instructs her to carry on with her usual routine and write a convincing report to Moscow that he's been completely falling for her. However, Nate takes her to their quarters and his colleagues question her to ensure that they can trust her. She requests $30,000 to be paid to a bank account in Vienna. They hesitate, but when she mentions that Boucher had agreed to sell classified information to the Russian government, they oblige her request. The next day, Dominika proceeds with the meeting with Boucher. While waiting, Volantov shows up, surprising her. She asks him to wait in the hotel room she had booked for the transaction. When Boucher arrives, Dominika meets with her and introduces herself. Boucher is hesitant at first, as Dominika isn't the one she's supposed to be dealing with. Dominika explains that she and Marta are partners, and Marta couldn't make it to the meeting. Boucher attempts to leave, and Dominika threatens to expose her, so she cooperates and follows Dominika to the hotel room, where Volantov is waiting for them. They show Boucher the cash, and she hands over some floppy disks. She goes to authenticate them on the computer, and covertly exchanges the Boucher floppy disks with some CIA-supplied disks, as they had previously arranged. Meanwhile, Nate and Simon watch the entire transaction on camera. After the exchange, Dominika instructs Boucher to wait an hour before leaving. However, as soon as they leave, Boucher takes the money and exits the hotel immediately. Nate and Simon inform their agents outside while Nate retrieves the disks. On leaving the hotel, Boucher sees American agents outside and panics, causing her to accidentally step in front of a moving truck, killing herself. On their way, Volantov receives a call instructing them to board a flight straight to Moscow. He collects the floppy disks and Dominika's passport, and they head towards the airport. Unbeknownst to Dominika, the Russian intelligence service had someone at the hotel who alerted them as soon as the incident with Boucher occurred. Simon informs Nate of Boucher's death and the possibility of Dominika and Volantov heading to Moscow, realizing they've put her at risk. At the airport, Dominika signals Nate to retreat, as she sees him chasing after them, leaving him frustrated. Back in Moscow, Dominika undergoes severe torture to confess to betraying Boucher to the CIA, but she denies it. Despite death threats, she maintains her stance. Ivan intervenes, urging her to tell the truth, but she insists on her allegiance to her country and requests to be sent back to finish the mission. After much deliberation, they agree to send Dominika back, accompanied by an operative, Maturin, who will monitor her and eliminate her if they find out she has been compromised. Dominika returns to Budapest, where Nate welcomes her warmly. They return to his apartment, and Dominika requests that they provide safety in America for her and her mother, and a payment of $250,000 to be deposited into an account in Vienna. After spending a lovely night with Nate, Dominika wakes up to find him being tied up by Matoran. Dominika helps restrain him, and Matoran begins torturing Nate to extract the name of the mole. Dominika assists Matoran at first, but then turns against him. In the struggle, she frees Nate, and together they overpower Matoran, leading to Dominika ultimately killing him, while sustaining injuries in the process. Nate instructs her to call the embassy. Dominika wakes up in a hospital and is shocked to see General Korchnoi. He confesses that he's the mole she's been looking for. He reveals that he was initially patriotic but turned against the corrupt Russian system and began working with the Americans to fight corruption. Believing Dominika shares his ideals, he suggests she turn him over to the Russian authorities to earn their trust and continue his work as a mole in order to make her uncle and other corrupt officials pay for their crimes. However, Dominika has other plans. She contacts Colonel Zakharov and reveals that Ivan is the mole. She had obtained Ivan's passport number before and opened an account in his name to receive payment of $250,000 from the Americans in Vienna. Additionally, she planted incriminating evidence, such as wine glasses used by Nate, and planted it in Ivan's apartment. With this, the Russians meet with the Americans to confirm the mole's identity and trade him for Dominika. While Ivan walks closer, he kisses Dominika and walks away. Not too far, a Russian sniper killed Ivan and everyone runs. Days after, Dominika is congratulated and promoted for her exceptional work by her Russian superiors. After that, Dominika spends time with her mother in their home in Russia. While on her bed, she receives a silent phone call with Grieg's piano concerto playing in the background, indicating Nate to be on the other line. And this is where our story ends. If you'd like to see us recap any other movies or topics you have in mind, just drop a comment and let us know. And don't forget to hit the like button, share this recap, and subscribe to stay updated for the next one. Until next time.